Hello and welcome to the She Reads Romance Books podcast, the ultimate show for romance book lovers looking for the best books worth reading. I'm your host, Leslie Murphy, and in each short episode, I share my favorite book list of recommendations so you know exactly what to add to your must-read list. Join me as I explore the romance genre and have fun collecting book boyfriends along the way, because life is better with a love story. All right. Hello, readers, and welcome back to the She Reads Romance Books podcast. And I am so glad that you are tuning in because today I am talking with an author who has already written one of the best romance books of 2025, and it's only February. That book being First Time Caller, which releases this week. I cannot wait to chat all about it with her. So I'm so excited to have my special guest on today. Welcome to the show, BK Borison.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. That was quite the intro. Thank you.
Well, I've been so excited to talk with you because I read First Time Caller. I had my advanced copy in November, and it hit me at the most perfect time because I just needed something to uplift me. And so ever since on She Reads Romance Books, I'm like, you have to read this book. It is so good. I'm passing my coffee off to my sister. I'm like, oh my gosh. So just because it's the perfect package from storyline, characters, pacing, your writing, oh my gosh. So I want to dive into all of these things. But before we do, I wanted to kind of go back to before you started writing it. So
Mhm.
give me into your headspace, right? You just finished Business Casual,
Uh-huh.
fourth book, last book of your phenomenal Love Light Farm series that everybody freaking loves. Business Casual is definitely on my best of 2024 list. So you just finished this popular series. Were you sad but excited to start something new, nervous to start something new? Get me in your head. What were you thinking?
I think I was excited, and because this was the first time too, where no one knew what I was working on. I hadn't shared anything about what I was doing next, very intentionally, because with Love Light, it sort of turned into this, it blew up, it turned into this whole thing. And everybody had a lot of opinions on characters I was working on and what their hopes were for those characters. And so for this, it was kind of special to just talk to myself about it, and I was the only one who knew, and so I sort of kept it really close to the chest, and it really writing it felt a lot like writing Love Light in that I wrote it completely for myself that way, because there was no one who had their hopes on what character it would be or who would be included and what would be happening with other couples, so it felt sort of special to have a secret and hold on to it for the whole time I was
Yeah.
writing it.
And really freeing in that way.
Yeah.
Had no expectations and just put it on the page, whatever you wanted to.
Exactly. I don't think I realized until that point that I was like, "Oh, wow, I hear a lot of voices besides my own at this point." So
Mhm.
it was and then my daughter had just started preschool at the time, so I was home alone. It was like a beautiful moment, like some me time, and I really got to disappear into the story, and I think it's what helped make the story what it is.
Wow, that's awesome. Well, for those who aren't familiar with it quite yet, can you tell readers a little bit about First Time Caller?
Sure. So First Time Caller is the story of Lucie and Aiden. Aiden is a jaded radio host who hosts a romance hotline. And one night, a young girl calls into his radio station hoping for a partner for her mom because her mom is lonely. Mom gets on the phone, is, "What are you doing?" And she ends up talking to Aiden for longer than she anticipated. That call goes viral, and then Aiden finds himself reluctantly sort of helping Lucy find her happily ever after, and shenanigans ensue from there.
Shenanigans. Yes. Oh my gosh. Well, I am definitely of the generation where a Meg Ryan rom-com,
Mhm.
every year was just what you went and you saw and you enjoyed it. And the fact that she had multiple Tom Hanks, you're bonus, right? So how much do you honestly love Sleepless in Seattle and how many times have you watched
Yeah.
it?
It's my favorite movie, it's the movie that made me wanna be a writer. Nora Ephron is that monologue about magic, that first phone call between Tom Hanks and the radio host. It's such a special movie to me, and I think I sort of put weight on my shoulders by saying that I wanted this book to feel like a Nora Ephron film. I think when people hear that, they come into the book with certain expectations. But my hope truly was just that people felt comforted and cozy and taken care of and something they could disappear into that felt good. But I love Sleepless in Seattle. I hope you can feel how much I love the movie when you read the book.
Absolutely.
I love it.
And all of those qualities that you just listed, hands down, I felt. Like, I think I wrote, and maybe in my review, I don't know, I felt like I just had this warm hug the entire time I was reading that book, and you don't get that all the time, and I didn't want it to end, and very rarely will I, like, get to the end of a book and be like, "I really think I wanna start right back at page 1 again," you know? But I love that that movie and that Nora Ephron inspired you. Is that, like, her top movie ever, or do you have a top 3 of her movies?
Well, it's funny because the series, so it's this First Time Caller is the first in a 3-book series, the Heartstring series, and each book is a different sort of, I've been calling it, it's inspired, it's sort of like seasoned by a different Nora Ephron film. So this one's Sleepless in Seattle. Book 2 will be When Harry Met Sally, and book 3 is You've Got Mail, which are the
I
trifecta.
mean, the trifecta of her, yes,
It's
for sure. Oh, that give me chills. That's gonna be so exciting. Yay! Well, the reason why Lucy is single in this book is different than the movie, but
yeah.
I how you explored her thoughts and her feelings on being single and whether or not she really wanted to start dating, even though her daughter sort of thought she should. Was that really important to you to really bring out to her character? Because I really appreciated that part of this
Yeah.
book.
I think if you're a mom, you tend to lose yourself. The thing I have struggled with, and I have 2 young children, and the thing that I struggled with after having children was the sort of loss of identity after you have a child, and you become completely in service to this child who needs you so deeply. And I think as a mother, you sort of lose who you were in that. You rediscover who you are in that, but you lose who you were before. And so for me, it was really important that Lucy has been taking care of her daughter for all these years and taking care of the people around her. You know, she's a good employee, she's a good partner, she's a good mother, she's a good friend. And I think she sort of lost herself under all those different titles. And I wanted her to feel like I have all the love I could ever possibly need. Do I really need to have a romantic partner?
Mhm.
And I wanted to explore the idea of if you don't have romantic love, is something missing, or can you be filled by the other love in your life? Which is very much where Lucy is.
Mhm.
And when we start the book.
Absolutely. And that was sort of like my next thought. I was like, I feel like readers will really be able to identify with her, whether you're a mother or not, just because she seems so relatable in terms of how honest she is with her feelings and the thoughts that she has about all of those things that you just mentioned. But I'm curious, like, so she's a mechanic, which I loved. So what sparked that?
I wanted her to do some I wanted her to not, there's always like the female character in a romance jobs, like bakery or artist. I wanted her to have something that was very, I don't know, it just felt true to her character. Like she works with her hands, she finds solutions. She takes things apart to figure out what's not working and puts it back together again. It just, when I was like sort of brainstorming who she was as a person, it just made sense to me that she would be a mechanic. And I love the idea too of Annie in Sleepless in Seattle, the Meg Ryan character. She's a reporter. And it's sort of like a similar thing, where she takes things apart like solid pieces and then puts a story together. So I thought there was a good parallel without being too close together. And I don't know, it just made sense. I love that I got to explore a female character in a male dominated industry, but have her be very supported in her role. Um,
Mhm.
with a cast of characters around her that were goofy but well-meaning.
Yes.
Yeah.
And some fun things that you could play off of her being a mechanic with the tow truck and fun things like that.
Yeah, and her coveralls and just it
Yes.
just but it just, it was a good way too to feed into it was I had a lot of fun in this book reversing romantic tropes between the male and female roles. Like there's one scene too where Lucy is teaching Aiden how to skee ball, And, we see in romance books and films a lot about the male character showing the female character how to, like, stand and position their hips. So it was fun for me to write her showing him how to do that. It was just
Nice.
some of that.
Did those things, the scenes sort of come to you as you write? Like, I'm gonna have her do this and let's flip it. Or is it just some of them you have sort of planned out already in your mind?
I think some of them I had planned out, but I really felt like I didn't realize the extent of it and the intentionality of it, I think, until my editor commented on it. She was like, "I really like how you flip this stuff around." I was like, "Oh, I did do that.
Yeah.
That was on purpose." Sometimes like you're just following the story, like stuff just it's so weird. Like I try to explain what it's like, but it just happens. So following the natural flow of the story is just what made sense for the two
Wow.
of them.
Nice. Well, I also think readers, well, whether they've had a lot of dating history or not, can relate or not blame her for not wanting to jump back into the dating pool, right? Given her history, because it's tough. But I loved reading about some of her dates. Like, were those fun to create and think about?
It was a balance between, like, not making them too bad and, like, making them just feel like not the right fit for but also, like, reinforcing this belief of, like, she's like, "Oh, this is why I don't do it," like, you put so much of yourself out there to get so little return. Some of it was definitely taken from my friends who are in the dating world. I haven't been in many, many moons. And I tell my husband all the time that I am so glad I don't have to do modern dating because I would be lost. I would
Oh my gosh.
like the apps and the communication, it was a lot simpler when my husband and I were dating. So I definitely borrowed some stories from friends in terms of the men Lucy interacts with.
Nice. Love it. Well, she's fantastic. One of my favorite heroines, but let's talk about Aiden because and what do you think that readers are gonna love most about him and why he'll be, a favorite book boyfriend?
I think Aiden I think he comes across as your stereotypical grump, but I think he's just so hurt and trying to hide it that he's built these walls around himself. And I think what I love about Aiden so much is that he deeply craves connection and love for himself, even though he's like, I don't want it. I'm so grumpy, blah, blah, blah. I think like in these moments when he gets to be a part of a bigger connection, a bigger group, that he really thrives in those moments. There's one scene in the book where Lucy's having breakfast with her family and Aiden is sort of like on the peripheral of that. And he so badly wants to be in that moment. And I love that about him is that he craves love, he craves connection, but he hasn't felt safe enough to sort of seek it out. And then Lucy blows in and upends his whole life.
And I obviously love the nod to Sleepless in Seattle, him being the radio host.
Mhm.
And I can't tell you, reading this book, how badly I wanted to be a fly on the wall in that little recording room. I mean, I kind of felt like I was there already because of your
Yeah.
writing, but I mean, the chemistry oozing off of them, the tension oozing off of them from like passing snacks and braiding her hair. And I'm just like, oh my God, these two, like, and all they had to do was say each other's name and I felt the tension. They clearly felt the tension in the book. So I was just like, she's phenomenal. Right? Writing this tension, like writing it, I don't know.
It felt like writing it felt like a school kid crush almost, like the way they would look forward to seeing each other in the booth and, like, writing their little notes to each other and, sort of teasing. It felt very innocent and gentle in the way that first crushes do before before the big feelings get involved.
Mhm. And one of my favorite things, I won't say what specifically, that might be a spoiler, but one of my favorite things about him is that he notices things
Mhm.
and doesn't just notice them for the sake of noticing, but he does stuff with them. There's things that he noticed, and I don't know what it says about it. I mean, it doesn't take much. Just notice, and that's what he
Yes.
did. Even though he think I don't believe in love anymore, but that alone, I was like, yes,
That's to have all your details and idiosyncrasies picked up on. It just shows such an immense amount of care. It's just such a lovely gesture. I love that about him is that the whole book he's saying, "This isn't something that I want or need," and but the whole time he's just falling in love.
Yes. And the fact he kept repeating, like, "I can't give you what you want," right?
Mhm.
And I'm like, "But you can."
"You already are, babe."
You are, exactly. Oh my gosh, that was, like, fantastic. And, talking about the tension and chemistry between them, I think that first kiss scene, I think, is gonna be one that I'll have to go back and reread several times throughout this year.
I knew what that first kiss was gonna be from the beginning. So getting to that point was sort of like I was sort of, like, itching to get there because I knew exactly what it would be, um,
Mhm.
and I knew what would be, like, the incendiary moment for them. So it's fun when you know,
Oh
'cause
my god.
sometimes you don't know when the first kiss is gonna come. So for Lucy and Aiden, I knew where it was, and I knew I wanted to get there. This book is a bit of a slow burn, like, they have a slow build up to get to that point. So getting there for me, it was like, "We're here, we did
Yes.
it, and now we get to have fun with it."
Oh my gosh. Well, I'm that was another point I was gonna say that I think this is like one of a perfect slow burn for fans who love that type of romance book, like textbook with the build up and attention and those moments that they have sort of in and outside of the booth together that just sort of build on their connection, I felt like.
Mhm.
But that's gotta be I mean, I'm not an author, so that seems really hard to do, and to do it well, maybe. Do you find that or no? Is it just,
I think it's
um,
harder to write a convincing, like, off the
it
jump.
oh, the insta love kind of thing?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's really hard to write that in a way that feels compelling and convincing. I think you can write attraction and sort of, like, the tension from the beginning, but, like, a
Mhm.
convincing, like, "I genuinely have feelings for you, and you genuinely have feelings for me," type thing. It's why I love Friends to Lovers so much because you have, like, the innate built-in background as a writer to play with and, like, to reinforce the
Mhm.
relationship. I don't know if I could write 2 characters who meet each other who instantly sort of decide. And for Lucy and Aiden, it made so much sense, they both have their fears and hesitations, and it's
Mhm.
holding them back from committing to each other. Plus,
Right.
the fact that Lucy is on Aiden's show to find a boyfriend that isn't him, and
Right.
so
Oh,
it's
yeah, we forgot that part, yeah.
that little thing. So that little speed bump in their relationship, but yeah, I think I feel like I've written 2 books since First Time Caller, and I'm like, "This is not gonna be a slow burn," and then I write it, and I'm like, halfway through, they haven't kissed, and I'm like, "What are you doing?"
I love it. Well, keep them coming because I think you do it really, really well, but I know it's just in awe because I'm like, just enjoying it along for the ride, and yet you're like, "Oh, it's coming, and it's gonna be so good," and it was, you're not, like, let down or anything, it's just, like, perfection, but I also love when you get little extras in books, and I feel like in this one, those little conversations you had between chapters, whether it was, like, texting or whatever, I just loved those. I thought they were super cute, especially the one where she's like, so she's smizing or something. I thought that was adorable. Did those sort of come after the fact, or would you just sort of write them as you were going along?
I
Or
think about halfway through, I realized that they were talking a lot about the radio show, but we weren't seeing a lot of them on the show, and it felt like I was sort of talking around this giant, like, elephant in the room, like, Lucy is on the show, but we never see her on the show, and so I was like I was trying to think of ways to include the radio aspect of it without talking a bunch about, like, we're on the radio now, now we're not on the radio," so it felt like these little interludes in between were a fun way of including the show without it becoming overbearing to the story.
well, they definitely served that. I love them. So I think readers will really enjoy those little nuggets as you go along, whether it's between them or callers, to the show.
Mhm.
I thought it was really, really
You know
fun.
what's it was a good way too to show, like, the engagement and investment of the community
Mhm.
story that was sort of taking off, like, the 3rd character of Baltimore as a city and
Yeah.
its people very much engaged in what Lucy and Aiden are doing with each other.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and I love that you wrote in your acknowledgments too that the book was this love letter to love. And I couldn't agree more. And why was that sort of important to you for this book?
Well, what I love so much about Sleepless in Seattle is that it's not just a love story. I mean, I feel like it's very minimally a love story between Annie and Sam. Like, I feel like it's much more so a love story between Sam and Jonah, his son, Annie and Becky, female friendships, platonic love, romantic love, parental love, friend love. It isn't until the very, very end that we get the first taste of like romantic love, lost love. And so I knew writing this book that I wanted it to feel the same, that I wanted it to feel like there's so many different loves that are just as valid as romantic love that are in our lives. And I feel like we don't get enough of that sometimes in romance novels. So I wanted it to be a true love story in that all aspects of love and different sorts of love are appreciated and touched on.
Yes, because and I felt that where obviously I loved Aiden and Lucy's love story, but I felt like I love when secondary characters sort of pop too. Not that they overtake, but they just sort of pop. And all of the relationships I feel like in this book were amazing, whether it was Mateo and Grayson, right? Or Patty and Lucy's coworkers, Aiden's coworkers. So it was just this incredible look in the story at family and sort of the family unit she carved out for herself and that sense of belonging no matter what it looked like. Was that then purposeful and intentional to this story? Yeah.
Oh, very much so, yeah. I wanted Lucy to have an unconventional family, a blended family. I wanted her to have a good relationship with the father of her child. I wanted her to have a good relationship with his partner. I wanted it's I mean, it's very, wish fulfillment in that all the relationships feel good and positive and fulfilling. But it's hopeful to want that for people, to want people to be surrounded by good people that they feel they can be their true selves with. So for me, especially Aiden, who has sort of closed himself off from allowing himself that to still have like people around him who care deeply for him and sort of protect him from himself sometimes
Mm.
and give him a hard time. I also liked for him and his development as a character of being this like standing on the sidelines of his own relationships and then coming into like owning them and realizing like, hey, I've kind of been a shitty friend. I'm gonna be better now. So that was all of the relationships were meaningful for me to write.
Yeah. I was like, "Oh, can I live next door on the other side of the house?" And so that I could, like, get the phone call that I need to run over and get the juicy gossip because 'cause I'm like, they just sound so fun and happy, and yeah, so I appreciated all of the characters in this book because and just what each of them contributed to either each character or the relationship. It was awesome, but did you have, like I mean, looking back on it, you've written 2 books already, but looking back, is there, like, a favorite scene from the book that was either just a blast to write or you're looking back on it and you're like, "I love that one so much. I can't wait for readers to tell me what they think about it," kinda thing?
I love the scene where Lucy's ex or the father of her daughter, I'll call him her ex because it feels weird calling him her ex because they're not really
Yeah.
that way. But my favorite scene to write and what I'm most excited for people to sort of experience is when Lucy's ex thinks Aiden set her up to be humiliated on the radio, and he comes in guns blazing, and Aiden doesn't sort of fight back. He's just like, "Yeah, I'm team Lucy too, like, what's going on?" And just what having Grayson, Lucy, and Aiden all interact in one scene together, that was a lot of fun for me to write, and scenes like that too, where sort of her world and his world are coming together in a very effortless way, and everybody just likes the people around them all work together. So it was fun watching their sort of lives slowly shift more and more entwined. And Grayson as a character was just also just a total hoot for me to write. He had a very clear voice in my head. I knew exactly what I wanted him to be. And his lines and his mannerisms are always my favorites in this.
Yes, oh my gosh, I loved him. And I'm like, "Oh, what's he gonna try to cook for dinner?" Just, all the little things. But you're right, it just seems so effortless. So it was like, "Aiden, stop fighting it. Like, it's just happening. Go along for the ride because
Yeah.
it's just, yeah, effortless." But so did you before you when as you went into this book, did you already know, like, this is gonna be a series, it's gonna be based on all of these, or did Jackson just speak to you and you're like, he needs his story now," or
It I knew it was gonna be a three-book series revolving around the Heartstrings radio crew. That's how I pitched it, to Berkeley. I didn't know who would be book 2 when I was writing it. Actually, the couple I chose for book 2, Berkeley said, "No, you're gonna do this couple instead." And I was like, "Great, okay." So it has shifted a little bit from the original plan, but I knew Jackson for sure was gonna have his story. I mean, from the first page, I was like, "This boy needs a love story." And the third, I haven't talked about who it'll be yet, but they were always planned from the very beginning.
oh my gosh, awesome. Well, from the 2 movies that you mentioned that they're gonna be sort of wrapped around, I mean,
I feel like it's very
old.
obvious. Once you read the book, I feel like you'll know who the next 2 are about. Book 2 is Jackson. So
Mhm.
I feel like I've said that before. But book 3 I haven't talked about yet.
Wow, so great. Oh, well, you mentioned you have a new bundle of joy at home, so I
I
have to
do.
ask, like, how do you balance it all, right? Like, what is your superpower where when it comes to carving out a work-life balance to you cranking out these bestsellers? Like, what is yeah, tell us how you do it.
Well, right before this call, I was asleep on the floor of my daughter's room, and I woke up at 7:45, told my husband, I was like, "If I 9 times out of 10, I will fall asleep putting my daughter to bed." And I was like, "If you need to come get me." I woke up, like, sat up in her bed. I was like, "Oh my god, 7:44." So ran downstairs, made some tea. Balance has been tricky. I'm lucky that my job is very unstructured and that I control what my day looks like. But sort of navigating life with 2 kids instead of 1 being so small, a lot of deadlines because I was a cuckoo person and signed 2 book contracts instead of 1. But, writing for me has always felt like an escape and something that I do for myself. And so when I, quote, "need to go to work," it's something that feeds my brain and feeds my soul, and it's me time. And it's time for me to disappear into a place where I feel immensely comforted and satisfied. And so for me, it feels less like work and more like a super cool, fun thing I get to do. Uh, balance. Now that said, I don't sleep very, which I think is the nature of having a small baby. But it's fun. My work is really fun, and I feel really lucky to do it. And so it's not hard to make the decision to stay up a little bit later and write some books. Right now, it's very much of I will shove my work in whatever crevice of time I'm allowed. We'll probably get to the point, God knows when, where I can have scheduled writing time again. But right now, it's very seat of my pants.
Fair. And was that always the goal? Like, you knew, like, writing is what I wanna do, this was my path?
No,
Okay.
I hadn't. It was never the goal. I was just,
Oh
I
my
was,
gosh.
I
Now
was
I'm even more impressed,
I
jeez.
was telling my husband downstairs a few minutes ago, I was like, "I can't believe I get to do this." Like, I wrote Love Light Farms on during COVID. My daughter was very small. My husband's a physician, so he was working all the time. I wouldn't see him for days at a time because he would just be at the hospital. And so I was taking care of the small baby by myself during COVID, isolated, no friends, no family. I felt like I didn't have anything for myself, so I started writing Love Light as something just to do, to disappear into and to have that felt like a grown up thing to do. And I was like, I'll just publish it and see what happens. I self published it. And then a lot of things happened since then. And then I never in a million years thought I always wrote on the side of whatever job I had. And I enjoyed writing fiction, but I never thought I'd be writing novels full time and doing this as my job. It was never the plan. So here we are.
Well, one of the blessings of the pandemic, we'll say. We
Yeah.
now your work,
Yeah.
which is
And
fantastic.
truly there was a lot. I mean, if the I'm not sure if the pandemic didn't happen and I wasn't at home, I don't know if I ever would have, like, felt brave enough or, like, I had the time to or I don't know. I don't it was just, like it was such a sad, dark time, that it sort of kicked me into doing something that made me feel hopeful. I don't
Yeah,
know. So I don't know what would have happened otherwise.
really cool. It's exciting. Well, what else do you want readers to know about First Time Caller besides that it releases February 11th before we sort of ask you about BK the Reader?
It releases February 11th. Uh,
Dude.
I
Are
don't
you
know.
going on tour or no? Are you sticking home because
Oh,
of
I am going on tour. Yes, so this is the first book I get to go on tour for. I leave my first event is on Saturday, and then I'm all over the place. I'm in St. Louis, DC, Baltimore, Brooklyn, Indiana. I'm all over the place. My daughter has demanded I bring her a present back from every stop, so that's what
course?
I'll be doing. I'm going on tour. I'll be doing all sorts of things on Instagram too. Author BK Borison is where you can find me. I'm there probably too much. Um, but yeah, I'm really excited. I'm so excited for this book to be out in the world. It feels like a long time coming, so I'm excited to share it.
You guys, I wish you could see the big smile on my face after talking with BK Borison in this interview. She was just a blast, and I am so excited for what's to come for her, including the release of First Time Caller, which you can pre order now, which releases on February 11th. Trust me, you are definitely going to want to read this romance book. If you want to hear even more about BK and BK as the reader, her favorite romance books, her favorite authors, be sure to join the She Reads Romance Books book club, where you can gain instant access to my exclusive extended video interview, where you can again learn more about BK the reader and listen to all of my extended video author interviews from the She Reads Romance Books podcast. Just go to shereadsromancebooks.com/book club and join today. Thanks so much for listening, and as always, happy reading, because life is better with a love story. That's all for this episode of the She Reads Romance Books podcast. I hope you enjoyed it and found some new books to add to your TBR list. If you did, please subscribe, rate, and review the show on your favorite podcast app. It really helps me reach more romance book lovers like you, and I appreciate your support. If you're a book boyfriend collector like me, then you'll want to join my email list so you never miss a podcast episode or a new book list. Just visit shereadsromancebooks.com/join and sign up today. As a thank you, I'll instantly send you my list of top 10 book boyfriends that will make you swoon. Trust me, you don't want to miss this list. Thank you for listening, and until next time, happy reading.